So this week we are doing true crime.
True story.
Which is true crime.
Okay.
Yeah. So we do a lot of true story movies on this podcast. So if you like true story movies, definitely stick around and subscribe and all of that stuff because we're doing them a lot.
We do a lot of them. They're not always murder.
No, but I do like murder.
Yeah. I mean, we have done a lot of true crime type movies. We did the Manson movie a while ago.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
So we do that occasionally, but it's more just usually a true story that is generally inspiring.
Usually, yeah. We like to keep things upbeat around here, but I am very interested in true crime. I like true crime podcasts, all that kind of stuff. So
we're obsessed with only murders in the building.
Very obsessed. So if you guys like that kind of stuff, do make sure you subscribe and let us know that you're interested in that because we can make sure that we tailor the movies to things you like. But given that we're doing true crime,
okay,
I did find a quiz online that is dark, but I also would like to do. So if you guys want to do it along with us, it is at crimemuseum.org. And then email me your results and I will share them if you want me to on the next podcast, and like shout you out if you have a podcast or whatever the case may be, or I won't. And I'll just, laugh about it to myself. But anyways, this is to find out what serial killer you are.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm going to start.
Badly for me, I feel.
It is going to go badly for you, I feel. So you need to pick a city that I guess that you like. So your choices are Los Angeles, New Orleans, Seattle, Chicago, New York, or Miami.
Chicago.
Okay. Don't aim for a certain killer. What is your favorite season? Spring, summer, winter, fall?
Fall.
Okay. What do you want for dinner? Pizza, salad, pasta, sushi, shrimp gumbo, hot dog, a very rare steak, or chicken?
Pasta.
Okay. How would you kill your victims? Strangling, bludgeoning, stabbing, or shooting?
Probably bludgeoning.
Oh, that's dark. Please don't become a murderer. Pick a college major. Pre-law, music, business, religious studies, gender and sexual studies, history, or political science.
Well, I have a business.
Okay,
already,
so you're going to pick
we'll
business? Okay. What is your best quality? Intelligence, charming personality, passion, leadership skills, or free spirit?
Of those choices, I'll say intelligence.
I'm shocked, really. You just won the lottery. What are you going to do with the money? Pay off student loans, go on a dream vacation, buy a lavish new home, share with friends, buy a new car, invest it, or live off of it for the rest of my life?
Pay off the loans.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you didn't say that, you were lying. Okay, so you've only got a few more. Pick a decade. 80s, 60s, 90s, 1830s, or 70s?
90s.
The 90s was not an option.
Oh,
wait, no, I lied. It is an option.
Yeah, you said 80s or 90s.
If you were arrested for murder, you would plead not guilty but eventually confess, plead guilty but try to get an insanity defense, flee the country and risk greater punishment, plead guilty but claim self-defense, plead not guilty by reason of insanity, plead not guilty, or plead guilty.
Plead not guilty.
Okay. And then the last one is, if you killed someone, what would you do with the body? Dump it far from home, cut it up and hide the pieces in my home, hide it in my home, or leave it at the crime scene?
Dump it far away.
Okay.
None of those are good options for disposing a body.
No,
there are way better choices.
Let's not teach people how to do that. Okay, so you got Charles Manson. Charles Manson, late 60s. Manson led a commune known as the Mansfield family in a murder spree on the California desert. Manson believed that there would be an apocalyptic war of the races known as Helter Skelter, by the name of which was taken from the song, blah, blah, blah.
How the hell did I get Charles Manson when I answered none of them?
It doesn't give a reason as to why you got Manson. Is it because you're cunning? Is it because you're intelligent?
I don't know. That's a really inaccurate bad search.
What serial killer do you feel you should have gotten?
I don't know.
Do you want to be Ted Bundy? Like, what is it here?
Zodiac never got caught. Jack the Ripper.
Okay. All right. But anyways, if you guys do this quiz, let us know what you got and if you think that it is fair to you. And also why you think you got it, because it doesn't tell you. I didn't take it.
Oh.
Because I don't want to be a serial killer, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
But anyways, okay, so the movie we are doing is called True Story. It stars James Franco and Jonah Hill. So I am Shay.
I am Tyler.
And this is Cinematically Correct. And this is going to be a different episode because we're really going to kind of talk about the true story of what happened. Like the true story of True Story.
Yeah.
So if you like true crime and you enjoy hearing about these type of things and you don't know the true story of Christian Longo, then make sure that you stay for this because we're going to do our best to kind of go through what happened and what we think the movie did right and wrong.
And get into the nitty-gritty a little bit. We're going to try these.
We're going to try. So, anyways, before we get into that, you do have a beer.
I do have a beer. And I'm going to hell for this pick.
Yes, you are.
So, it's Black Hat Brewworks. And the name of the beer is Family is Forever.
Yikes. And why did you pick that for a movie about a man murdering his family?
Because there was no other choices that were even remotely close. So
you decided to go dark?
I went straight dark. This is a dark movie, dark reality. So I went with the worst possible choice.
I hope you hate it.
Oh, it's an IPA. So.
Oh, that was a nice crack, though.
Yeah. Oh, it's a double.
8.1%.
Yeah, it's a double. That's really not nice at all.
You deserve it for picking that for this movie.
No, that's a 2.
You earned that.
That's a 2 out of 5. That's just not good.
All right. So, too bad for you. Do you want to do the brief synopsis?
Brief synopsis.
The movie is following Mike Finkel, a former New York Times reporter that is fired, and his journey through interviewing Christian Longo, who is a family annihilator that killed his entire family, and then assumed Mike Finkel's identity while on the run in Mexico.
Yep.
And the movie is about that.
Yeah, that's about right.
Yeah.
Okay, so the cast, I mean, there's not a lot of people in this movie. Jonah Hill is Mike Finkel.
Yeah.
So he plays a journalist who has been kind of excommunicated from the New York Times and is kind of looking for that story to kind of bring him back into the limelight, and finds out that Christian Longo is posing as him and finds that as an opening to like kind of get back in there. I mean, I like Jonah Hill. I've always liked Jonah Hill.
He's made a very good transition from his earlier work where he was comedic relief in terrible movies. I think he was in the movie Ask Me About My Wiener.
Yeah, I think that was him saying that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But no, he's come a long way. He's been in a lot of movies with Leo DiCaprio recently, Wolf of Wall Street.
I still need to see that.
More serious things. So he's come a long way. Fine performance in this. He even ad-libbed a few scenes where he bruised the bones in his hand by punching the stall.
Oof. Rough.
So I was not supposed to be in the movie. It wasn't planned on it. He just did it. Happy with his performance. Yeah, I mean, I think he was the best actor in the movie.
So, I'd say James Franco is the best actor. Now, granted, I have issues with James Franco. I have a hard time watching him knowing the things that he's done in his personal life. The whole, messaging minors are, I don't even know if they were all minors, but on Instagram and that
just
whole thing.
Just being a creepy person in general.
Yeah, I mean, that bothers me, but I do enjoy his acting. Obviously, we watched that Stephen King short series that...
right. Oh, the 1963 or whatever.
Right, and I really enjoyed that. Like, I really like him in that, and I enjoy his acting. I think he plays a really good creepy person, and I do. So it's hard because...
We've also done a James Franco movie for the podcast.
Have we? What have we done?
The Interview.
Oh, you're right. You're right. This was a long time ago.
That's a long time ago.
Yeah. But yeah, so I enjoy him, but it is hard to separate him. But honestly, kind of fitting that you're supposed to dislike him in this movie. Felicity Jones, we actually did a podcast movie for. So
we did On the Basis of Sex, which is the true story of RBG.
Yeah.
Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Yeah. So if you haven't seen that, because not a lot of people seem to have seen that, that is a great movie. And she's great in it.
So solid movie. Totally recommend.
Yeah.
Absolutely great.
And the only other person I wanted to mention, and only because I'm a 90s kid, is Ethan Suplee, who was, what's his name? He was the wrestler in Boy Meets World.
Frankie, thank you.
He plays Pat Fredo, who's just basically the guy who gives information about...
He's the reporter
Christian
that
Longo.
gets Mike Finkel involved by calling.
He's really not in it much, but the 90s kid in me needed...
We've also done another movie with him in it.
Yeah, I remember that we did, but really I'm not going to remember which movie. That's too much detail.
It was the Hunt where they do the...
Oh, The Hunt. Yeah. Wow. Just The Hunt is what it is.
They start shooting people that are Republican?
Yes.
Satire? Yeah.
Yes. You remember all the details. Good for you. I do not. But yeah, so that's all the characters. Is there anybody else you wanted to bring up?
Not really. Oddly enough, this is the second movie where James Franco is romantically tied to an MJ.
I'm assuming, given that you're saying MJ, Spider-Man would be the other. Yeah, just because it's the only movie I know that the love interest is MJ.
The original Tobey Maguire Spider-Mans, not the new ones.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for that little piece of trivia.
You're welcome.
Okay, so are we ready to kind of dive into what actually happened? What's this story all about? So for the story, I'm going to start at the very beginning to kind of give a little bit of background on who he was and like what could be motivating this. So he was in a religious upbringing, very conservative religious. It was either Mormon or Jehovah's Witness. It seems to be kind of conflicting as to which one that was. And he married pretty young and very much was the type of person that lived outside his means. He was very much interested in having all of the fanciest cars, living in a nice place, all of that kind of stuff.
And it seemed like he also, on top of marrying young, he also had 3 children very early in the marriage.
Yes.
And he did start off reasonably successful with a business that he started. There's very much the sense that he was overspending based off of his income. And that just led to a spiral of having to resort to fraudulent checks and credit card theft and petty crimes and stealing cars, etc., to keep up with the appearances.
Right. Now, as for his family, his parents, and his childhood, there is speculation that he was abused as a child. They were obviously also from a conservative religion. I couldn't confirm if that was true or not true, but that is very common with serial killers and all that type of stuff, so I would not be surprised. But anyways, he did move into kind of a fraudulent lifestyle. He was kind of a very intelligent con man. He was very good at speaking. He was very good at convincing people to do things that they wouldn't otherwise do.
I think officially he was tested and has an IQ of 130, which is well above the average, almost bordering on genius Mensa.
Yeah, which again is quite common for serial killers. Now, granted, we don't know that he's a serial killer, but he killed his entire family, so he's at least an annihilator. So, anyway, basically, his crimes before the murder consisted of counterfeiting, fraud, and stealing, I guess would be the big crimes. So one thing he did commonly was he would take cars and he would trade them in, or at one point he bought his wife a van that she really wanted. And what he did was he got the van and he just drove it off the lot saying that he was test driving it. And then he took the plates from his car and switched it over and then registered his car, but then put the plates over for the van. So the only way that they would ever be able to find out that he actually had that van was if they actually pulled it over and ran the VIN number. Right. So, I mean, really smart that he did that. Oh, and he also, the way he was able to do that, I forgot about this, was he got a license and he had a scanner and he laminated this fake license that he created basically in like Photoshop or some other equivalent program. He changed the information, he printed it out, he cut it out, he laminated it. And the only thing he didn't have was a state decal, which is super easy to like just look over. And then when he went to the car rental place, he handed her the credit card or the license. It had a totally different name on it. She took it and held it for him to, when he came back with the car, she would give it back. And he just left it there because it isn't his. And
so this pattern of criminal behavior led to a falling out with his church and forced the family to move repeatedly. So they moved continually up until...
Running from his debt.
Running from the debt, running from his past, up until they moved all the way to Oregon. And so Oregon is really the start when the site of all of the murders.
Yes. Now, just as a note, one of the speculations as to why this may have happened is right before he moved to Oregon, his wife's sister found a letter that he was cheating on his wife with another woman. And it's hard to say if that's true or not true. They don't really know, but the fact that he was cheating. She did actually find a letter, but the fact that he was cheating, they never confirmed if that happened or not. But in the letter, he stated he no longer loved his wife and he needed to be away from the family.
I very much would buy that, given that he wrote other letters after his arrest to women.
Yes, he did.
So
he quite enjoyed the attention, it seems.
He definitely enjoyed the attention. So they moved into a condo in Oregon. He got a job at a Starbucks because that's the only job that he could get.
Paying $7.40 an hour.
$7.40 an hour. Because of his criminal record, he needed a job which wouldn't do a background check. Hard to see his wife being okay with that as their foreseeable future with 3 small kids. So the pressure's on for Christian Longo. And at some point, he snaps and decides to kill his family.
Right.
So the official story from the prosecutors is that he killed his wife and youngest daughter and then drove to a bridge and killed his 2 other children by drowning them while they were still alive, by throwing them off the bridge.
With weights.
With weighted pillowcases tied to their legs.
Yes.
That is the prosecution's narrative, and there are quite a few things that tie into that, despite there being a lack of actual physical evidence.
Yes. Now, that is important to know that there is 0 physical evidence in this case. He was convicted with no physical evidence. I don't think at all.
No, it's solely based off of eyewitness testimony, circumstantial evidence, and the fact likely that he fled to Mexico after the fact.
Right.
So where would you like to start with the testimony from the witnesses?
Well, so, I mean, I guess the biggest witness for this case was the person who met him on the bridge.
Yes.
So there is a man who states that they saw a van pulled over to the side of the bridge. They walk up to this person and they said it's a man. They think it was Christian Longo. They do not confirm it was him, but they think it's him. The man that's in the van says that they're pulled over to the side of the road at 2:00 in the morning because of their check engine light.
It was 4:30 in the morning.
Oh, 4:30 in the morning. I'm sorry. I knew it was very late at night. And it was really weird and whatever. And that happens to be where the bodies were dropped. So
where the bodies were dropped, Christian Longo had a red minivan at that time. He hadn't yet stolen a new car.
Right.
So that is the linchpin in that. And that to me is the most damning evidence because the children were alive when they went into the water. So he couldn't have killed them, or no one else could have killed them except for that moment.
Right.
So his story about his wife doing the murders for the 2 children and then him overreacting and killing her.
Okay, hold on. We didn't give that story yet. So this, what he's referring to is in the trial, in the movie, as well as in the real story,
yes.
Christian Longo decides to testify for himself. And in that testimony, he explains his past and kind of gives this sob story about, like, you know, how he was down on his luck and he was, you know, kind of just trying to make ends meet.
Wife.
Yeah, came clean to his wife. And basically what he stated was that after she found out about it, she was so distraught and destitute and felt that he killed them, is the words he said she used, and that she killed their oldest kid. And when she was telling him, he got so angry, he went into a rage, and then he killed her and then finished the killing of the rest of the kids because he felt like he had to finish the job.
Right.
And you know, it's so hard to say. Obviously, that is not what happened, but why, how, all of those things of what he did and all of that, I don't think we'll ever know. I don't think we're ever going to get that answer.
Well, even if he gives a reason, there's no good reason to murder your entire family. If you're looking to just escape, leave. That's what it comes down to. I mean,
yeah, he could have easily just said, you know what, I can't do this, and pieced out. Yeah, would he have been a jerk? Sure.
Yeah.
But, like, would he have cared given what we see of his nature? Probably not. So,
I've seen a lot of people in my personal life that have skipped out on their obligations to the family. And while it makes them a terrible person, they don't go to prison to death row.
Right. And he was already looking at changing his identity and
Yeah.
all of that. Like, why couldn't he have done that without the family? I get that he didn't want the family dragging him down anymore. Okay? One of the things they said they found was an obituary with him writing in the margins where he was clearly going to fake his own death to change his identity. He could have still done that with his family being alive.
So I thought the obituaries personally were him trying to claim a dead person's identity.
Oh, that could have been too.
So he was looking for dead people that were his general appearance that he could then take their name, take their information, and then disappear and live as a dead person.
That could have been too. Unfortunately, a lot of this stuff is speculation. They don't know. They just don't know. And the thing about listening to his story, even with him saying that he repents now and he feels bad now and he feels like what he did, he doesn't deserve to be able to tell his story and whatever. He's a storyteller. He's a liar. He's
very much concerned with being the center of attention. He's a narcissist and a borderline psychopath, according to the psychologist and psychiatrist that spoke with him.
Right. And that type of person, I would 100% believe, would agree or admit to something that he thought would give him more attention, even if it's not the full truth.
Right.
So do we know exactly how or why things happen? Probably not. We probably know what he was willing to say that he thought would get him the most attention. I really don't necessarily think we know exactly what happened. For all we know, he got upset about something and he flew into a rage and it was, just out of the blue and not what he expected. Or maybe it was something he planned for months at a time, but that didn't sound sexy enough. So he didn't want to tell that story. We just don't know. But I also kind of wanted to talk about how this movie framed it. Because there is a part to the story that we really haven't touched on yet.
Namely Mike Finkel.
Yes.
So the movie very much focuses on Mike Finkel. And to give a little bit of background on Mike Finkel, the movie does a good job of that, where it shows that he was a very talented reporter for the New York Times. On the same day that he gets the phone call about Christian Longo, he's actually fired from the New York Times for fabricating details of a story that he wrote about children being trafficked for cocoa plants, I believe, in Africa. And so he was let go from the Times. A reporter from the Oregonian called him asking for a statement about him being used as an alias by Christian Longo. And he was basically, really, what are you talking about? I don't know anything about this. Gets roped into it by Christian Longo because he's the only person that he's willing to speak with outside of his attorney. And he goes there and interviews him and tries to get the details of the case and kind of gets sucked into this horrible story. And you can tell that he is very deeply impacted by his experiences with Christian.
Yes. So one part of the true story that we didn't mention is that once the murders happened, Christian Longo fled to Mexico.
Yes.
He was there for, I think, a month before he was found. And he was found, having relations with a photographer there. And when he was officially apprehended, he was using the name Mike Finkel. Now,
yes,
we find that he learned about Mike Finkel when he was working at a company that did distribution for the New York Times, and he became infatuated with his writing and wanted to write like him. And he was interested in his travels and the fact that he got to write all over the world, and he wanted to do that.
Yes.
So he kind of always wanted to be Mike Finkel, so it made sense that he would take that identity. So anyways, when he meets Mike Finkel in the movie, it very much, the viewer doesn't really think that he did anything. They kind of portray it as this man who got captured by the police, for using a pseudonym,
yep. An alias.
But he didn't really do anything. He was scared and he was confused, and he just didn't want anybody to know who he was. Like it felt like it was all a misunderstanding at the beginning of the movie.
I think a lot of the movie, even though we really do know that he did it for the entire, there's no real question that the children in the suitcase in the opening shot is a murdered child. We don't know any of the specifics, and we don't know for a fact that it is Christian Longo. We don't know anything, and James Franco does a very good job of being
Cunning,
and makes you feel sympathy for him, and leading you to almost believe that he's being set up or there's something else going on for a lot of the movie.
Which shows that he's a great actor,
Yes.
because Mike Finkel himself says, I actually have a quote from him. Hold on, let me grab that quote. He says, "It dawned on me that I wasn't necessarily his friend or his confidant, that I was his dress rehearsal." So he realized that all of these stories he was telling him and all of this stuff that he was saying, he wasn't saying it to tell his friend like what happened and to confide in him. He was saying it to see how it would play, to then find out how it would play for the jury.
And then basically a dress rehearsal to get his story buttoned up for closing arguments.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. He was really trying to figure out how that would work. And they do a really good job of showing that in the movie, where they have James Franco or Christian Longo use lines that we see Jonah Hill's character, Mike Finkel, give to him earlier in the film. I can't remember off the top of my head specific lines, but they do that a few times where he uses lines from their previous conversations to kind of sway the jury.
Right. So the one that I can think of is where Mike Finkel says, when you put the teddy bear in there, it was almost as if the teddy bear died with her, which he then lifts out and uses in his testimony in the movie.
Right.
And he does it a couple other times where Mike Finkel then realizes that he's not telling me anything. He's getting his defense lined up from our conversations, and he's not actually having any intention of telling me if he did it or not.
No, he was using him to get his story straight. He was, the movie frames it as he's asking Mike Finkel to teach him how to write, which could be true. It could be that he was really interested in writing. There is evidence to suggest that he was. But it seems more likely that he was interested in hearing somebody that is good at telling
creating
stories.
A narrative and telling a compelling story.
Right. And apparently, according to the research I did, Mike Finkel wasn't as the movie made him seem, the movie made it seem like he was all about the truth. And it seems as though he wasn't as much as a truth seeker as the movie made it seem. And so it could be that Christian Longo also knew that he was a person who was good at manipulating the truth,
making the truth suit his needs and making the truth what he needs it to be rather than what it is.
Right.
Yeah.
And if that is the case, it also makes sense why he chose him.
So yeah, that's how Mike Finkel fits into this, and that's really where the crux and the focus of this movie is watching Mike Finkel try to piece it together. You get sort of limited time with James Franco and Christian Longo for the movie. It really centers around him piecing together the correspondence, writing out the book, all of that, and it's more his story than Christian Longo's for the movie.
It's interesting because when you see true crime films, generally speaking, I'm thinking of the Charles Manson or the Ted Bundy, those type of films. The perspective is from the serial killer, or at the very least, a third party narrator who is focusing on what the serial killer did. Right. But it's very much focused on the serial killer and how they interact. But this movie is very much focused on Mike Finkel and how Mike Finkel interacts with the killer, as well as how that kind of impacts his outside life. You see his wife and the interaction with his wife, and there's a great scene with the wife where she goes and meets Christian Longo at the jail and kind of basically tells him that she's disgusted by him, and while her husband might be interested in his story, she doesn't care what he has to say because his story isn't important. The story that's important is for those whose lives are lost. Right. And it's just such a powerful scene because it's just like kind of like what you feel like Mike Finkel should be saying this whole time, but isn't. I don't think it's true. I couldn't find any indication that Mike Finkel's wife had anything to do with anything. I couldn't even find indication that Mike Finkel was married, but I'm sure he is. But I don't think that part of the story is true at all. But I do think it was actually a good scene that they put in there because it did give you some of that drama that you were kind of craving in this movie.
Yeah.
But there really wasn't a lot of details beyond that.
No, there's this whole movie. I think the biggest failing for the movie is that there's not very much substance there. They very much are focused on the base underlying parts of the movie, but they're not actually any of the specifics or getting into anything for us to look at. Like it's conversations and snippets, and I guess kind of like how Mike Finkel was experiencing things to start with, because he's getting everything in pieces from Christian, but there's not anything there. It's a lot of just fluff.
Yeah, that's true. Now I do have a controversial opinion that I feel that I could share about this movie. So normally when we watch movies that are about true stories, the thing that we always talk about is how we don't like it when Hollywood kind of changes a true story to make it, more dramatic or more interesting, right, or a love story or any of that, right?
Yeah.
In this movie, however, I really wish that they had taken some liberties. I think that the biggest failing of this movie isn't necessarily just that there was no substance to the story. I think they had two issues. I think the first issue is they chose the wrong perspective. I think they should have taken a third person omniscient narrator and kind of looked at the story of these two narcissistic men who were forming an unlikely relationship, right, and what that looked like and what, implications it had for both men equally. I think we should have seen both sides of that friendship and what the friendships meant to each of them, and that push and pull dynamic that was obviously there. But I also wish that they took some liberties with the story and kind of, maybe gave us a little bit more of that friendship, of what that looked like. Give us some of the letters, even if you don't have them, make them up, but give us some of that and kind of see, what was going on in their heads. Like, what were they feeling? What was driving them? I mean, in real life, Mike Finkel is still friends with Christian Longo. He still talks to him monthly. Like, what's going on in your head that you realize you've been conned by this horrible, evil man, and you keep him in your life all of this time?
So I don't know if Mike Finkel would consider themselves friends. I think he's begrudgingly an acquaintance, and he's part of that because of the book and because of that's part of his story. But I don't know if they're genuinely close.
Well, genuinely close doesn't matter. He's kept his acquaintance, as you say, right, for all of these years. Every month he answers that phone call that he doesn't need to answer.
I think that is fair. I personally would have liked to see more of the specifics. I would have loved to have
more of the specifics of what, though? What specifics are you looking for that they
more
give
of the
you?
Information from the actual case, if there is anything, or just a better outline of the actual crime, or a little bit of exposition on the victim so that you feel bad for them more than you just do for the fact that it's sad that children died. Like they could have had such a more powerful and compelling narrative if you had thrown a little bit of him before the murder, is taking his family from place to place to place, trying to provide for them, building a narrative that they're a family, and then going to the case.
That makes sense, yeah. I think this movie suffered with the fact that I do think it tried to stick with Mike Finkel's book. Now, I haven't read that book, but I do think that it did try to stay true to that. And I do think Mike Finkel was involved in this film. I don't know how much, but I do think he was involved. So I do think that it suffered from that, because I think that it tried very much to kind of tell the story in a way that Mike Finkel would be proud of it. And that's a difficult thing in a situation where, should he be proud of what he did? Should he be proud of the fact that he profited off of a man who clearly craved attention so much?
And murdered his entire family. There's no more unspeakable horror than what this man did to literal babies and children.
Right.
It's beyond the pale of all human comprehension and morality.
Right. Now, this is very similar to the Chris Watts murder. I'm sure most people know about that, where he killed his wife and children and threw them in a water tower. And it's a very similar thing. Seemed really nice on the outside, very charismatic. Nobody would have expected it. And then out of the blue, he just does that. And it was right after being caught cheating. Same thing. Just, and when he was questioned on it, he was the same. He didn't do it. I don't know what you're talking about. And seemed so nice and kind, and people wanted to believe him. But it's crazy to me. But this does bring me to a question about this movie.
Okay.
So what is the morality of not only making a movie like this, but also making a book like this? I mean, Mike Finkel spent so much time writing a book and got quite a bit of money by telling this story that was very much fed by a killer. And then this movie is also based on that book.
So that's complicated because it's not actually the guilty party profiting from it. So there are laws in place in almost every state where you're not able to, as the convicted party, benefit from the crime financially.
Well, of course not. But Mike Finkel is benefiting.
So that's the gray area. I think it is very inappropriate to do that. I'm of the opinion that the less notoriety these people get, the better. Because if that can deter one person from wanting the spotlight for those actions and those reasons, then it's worth it not giving anyone recognition. So school shooters or anyone that commits these horrible things that is in any way connected to their seeking notoriety, I think we should deny them of that as a deterrent and as a punishment for what they've done.
Now, do you think it could have been better or at least less morally gray if they had changed the names?
You're still profiting from that. If you are not giving the person the recognition that they are craving, that does take a lot of the problems out of it for me. So even though they know that it's about them, they're not getting that recognition.
Right. And they can't prove that it's about them. Now, one thing that kind of pushes this more towards morally not right to me is that the sister of Mary Jane, the wife, is beyond upset about not only the movie, but also about the book, and says over and over again how Mike Finkel is despicable for telling this guy's story, who clearly just wants to be in the spotlight, and they don't give the victim's family any peace. They're not able to go any amount of time without this story being in the spotlight because this keeps being brought up with, Mike Finkel doing this, and they just want it to go away. They just want to be able to relax and rest. And
now, not that they'd accept it, would it be more acceptable if Mike Finkel gave the proceeds to the victim's family?
I don't know. Would you want to profit off of the death of your, sister's family?
I mean, ideally, I'd want my sister and her family alive, but there's no unringing that bell. I don't know. I don't know if that's more insulting or helpful.
Yeah, I don't know if I would want that money, because I would feel like you're taking the story of the person who killed my sister, and now you're telling me, well, just shut up about it. I'm going to give you some money. I don't know how I feel about that. I don't know I think that would make me more angry. I'd feel like it was hush money.
I think that's probably fair. I mean, it's similar in terms of the O.J. Simpson If I Did It book, where the victim's family sued for the proceeds because you're not allowed to profit from a crime.
Mm-hmm.
And they did get all of the proceeds for that, but that was more of a spite thing against the person that they correctly view as guilty, taking advantage of their son's death.
Right.
So I don't know how I think there's no good answer for this. I don't think it's appropriate to profit from a tragedy like this. And I certainly think that it's problematic to give the person that is craving the notoriety that notoriety. And it's better to forget about them and forget that they exist, because that hurts them more than being locked in prison could.
Right. I agree with that. So I did want to, before we move on to our little sections that we have, talk about what's happened since the movie and his constant craving for notoriety, as we're talking about. So have you heard about what he has been doing since then?
Yes. So I am familiar with his pet project, which honestly, if they could figure out a way for that to work, I would be in favor of that being a choice.
Okay, so his pet project is he is trying to get the state, or I'm not sure, I think it's the state
and the federal government
to allow for death row inmates to donate their organs. So obviously, morally, that's not something that they're going to want to do. I did see that he actually offered an organ, I think it was a kidney or something like that, to somebody who needed it, and the person rejected it outright, did not want it. And so he's been getting, on the news for this and getting notoriety like he wants. And, he said he was inspired by the movie 7 Pounds by Will Smith, where I have not seen this movie, but something about in reparations for what he's done, he tries to save 7 lives is what I read.
So he causes the death of several people, and his way to give back is to kill himself and then donate all of his organs to people. Because he can't live with what he's done, so he's just going to help as many people as he can on his way out.
So that is what Christian Longo says he is motivated by. And now I have conflicted feelings, right? So first of all, I do obviously think that organ donation is so needed. And it's, if they're healthy, able-bodied people, that the organs can be used.
The problem is that they're not healthy, able-bodied people because they are euthanized by the state.
I guess the argument would be that they could do it in a way where they could take the organs prior to any damage coming of them.
I mean, they could do that. They could put the person under general anesthesia, take all of the organs, and then kill them, I suppose. You could also just, go back to hanging. So you're hanged by the neck until dead. Because
I'm sure there's a way to do it.
There has to be a way to do that where the organs are medically viable.
Right. But there's questions here also of the fact that he's getting this notoriety for this. Obviously, he came up with this idea to put himself in the spotlight, to make himself, okay, so the murders didn't get me the notoriety I wanted. Maybe
that's faded because people have forgotten about it. There's so much horrible that goes on in the world. No one's going to remember what I did 20 years ago.
But I can be remembered by being the inmate who got this to happen.
Right.
And, you want to believe he has good intentions, but it's really hard given what he's done. So should we be allowing his name to keep coming up for something like this? Even if they did decide to go forward with a program like this, I would hope that they would remove his name from it and that they could say an inmate suggested. They don't need to give him the recognition. Why does he deserve it? I don't think he does. Now, as for would I want an inmate's organ if it was between life and death, that's hard for me because there are some people that do believe that, you think of the idle hand situation, that if you get a hand from a serial killer, that your hand will kill people. There's a movie about that. There are people that believe that if you're given an organ or a body part or something from someone who is that corrupt and that evil, that evil can be transferred to you. And now I don't know what I believe. I don't know that I believe that it's that, that way, but I also don't know. And I know that there's a lot of things we don't know in this world.
I mean, I would honestly, personally, just assume take the organ if it was needed, regardless of where it comes from, as long as it's a good match and the person doesn't have any medical issues that would prevent me from taking the organ. I think that it's a nice gesture if that is something that could be worked out. Regardless of whose idea it is, regardless of how that happens, I think that there is value to society for that. And it's a way for the people to start on the path towards making amends. They're never going to fully make amends for what they've done, and they're going to have to live with that up until the day that they are executed by the state. But it is a positive thing to come out of a horrible thing, a horrible circumstance.
Now, do you feel that the person receiving the organ should be given the choice to be told, like, this is coming from somebody on death row and, you know, this is what he's done?
Yes.
You think they should be given that? Because right now, obviously, I really don't think you're told much. I do know that you are given information because people do and go find their organ donors or whatever, but I really doubt that they're given like a, you know, he's worked at Starbucks and he's done this and he's done that. I really don't think they're doing that.
It's not like the fertility clinics with the list of qualities about.
Oh, you don't get a little picture and like a bio? No, I don't think so. But in this case, I do think that you should be told where it comes from and what they did, because there are people that have that superstition, and I don't know if that would be fair to find out down the road, like, oh my God, like I got it from somebody who murdered their family. Like that seems, I don't know. And then the last thing with this would be, do you think that it's an empty gesture given that Oregon has put a moratorium on death row, on killing, death penalty
on executions
stuff since like
2011.
2011.
So 10 years.
So he really, the chances of him getting executed is slim to none. So this would be a moot point. So do you think it's an empty gesture that he's doing just for notoriety, or do you think that he thinks that somehow, some way, it's going to come back and he's actually going to need to use this?
It's one of the few good uses of Republican governors, I suppose.
Nice. That you said that on the podcast. Good job.
I mean, it is kind of an empty gesture because a lot of states have a moratorium on the death penalty. Oregon, I believe New York, Massachusetts. I don't think we even have the death penalty any longer.
Well, we do.
I don't think we do. I think the Boston bomber was tried federally.
Oh, that could be.
So I don't think we have the death penalty, but I know a lot of states have it on the books, but they have opted out of actually carrying out the sentence and leave them in prison for life without parole.
Right.
So I think he can say all he wants about this, and that's all nice to say. It won't happen, and he's not going to be executed, and it's just a pathetic excuse to just get back into relevance, and
which seems to be working.
Yeah.
So lovely. Okay, so that is everything that I think we have for the movie. As for does it stay true to the story, does it not? It actually does stay very true to Mike Finkel's version of the story. So if you're interested in that, I would definitely suggest checking that part out. But again, if you want to know more about the Christian Longo thing, the best thing I've seen on this is there is a YouTube video from the channel The Monsters. I will try and tweet it out so you guys can see it, or if you're interested in it and you don't see it, email me cinematicallycorrect@gmail.com and I will send that to you. That is the best comprehensive version of the story that I've seen. But yeah, this movie was more about Mike Finkel, so know that going into it. Do you have a history minute?
Tyler's History Minute.
So I have a few. The first, in that very impactful scene when Mike Finkel's wife goes in to speak with Christian Longo, she plays him a song and then tells him a story about an Italian composer from the Renaissance, Carlo Gesualdo, who, in a fit of rage after catching his wife with a lover, killed her and her illegitimate baby. That is not entirely accurate. So she's referencing Carlo Gesualdo, who is a real person. In October of 1590, so we're coming up on the anniversary, actually, it's the 16th of October, he caught his wife in bed with another man, and he did kill both of them. So he killed his wife and her lover, likely in a fit of rage for catching them in the act. There was no baby, thankfully.
Oh,
so that was started as a rumor, almost like propaganda after the fact, to
make it sound worse,
make him look awful. he was actually, the court ruled that there was no crime that was committed, likely because he had that moment of just rage that his wife was doing that to him. And they kind of said, yeah, I get it. Really odd fact about Mr. Gesualdo. He had servants beat him daily on a regular basis.
Why?
I don't know. That just says he had servants beat him.
Masochist?
I guess. Maybe he's making a penance for the crimes. He actually did feel guilty after the fact. But yeah, that's what I have for that. On another tragic note, I have a kind of personal tie to this movie.
You have a personal tie to a movie about a man who killed his entire family?
Unfortunately, yes. So
awesome.
There's a story, or there's a real life event from my hometown where a husband did this to his wife and then escaped to England and then had to be brought back and tried and sent to prison. His name is Neil Entwistle, and he killed his wife and months-old baby with a rifle, and then left them in the house and escaped to England.
Lovely. Yeah, I think I actually saw that on a TV show, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it was all over the news back in the early 2000s, if I'm not mistaken.
Yikes. Family annihilators. Lovely.
Yeah. It's unspeakable, and I can't begin to understand that.
No.
So that's what I have for the history minute. There's not a whole lot to go on because we've talked about the history of this case for the entire podcast.
Yes.
But
I'm more interested in what you're going to do for next week's history minute. Good luck. Okay, so we have audience asked. Now, you guys have not seen this movie. I'm hoping that this podcast makes you want to see this movie a little bit. We didn't sing its praises. However, it is a story that is pretty new to the screen anyways. I don't think there's any other movie about this out there, which is a rare thing for a movie. So I'm hopeful that some people do check it out. But because of that, our audience asks.
Audience asks.
Are light at best. They're really not real questions, but we're going with them because I don't want to give up the segment. So the Rise of King Asilis says, love James Franco. Who doesn't? So do you enjoy James Franco's acting outside of this movie? I've already kind of said my opinion. But...
I mean, I do. I honestly like him more in the dramatic roles than I do for his comedy roles.
Like which?
The movies that I don't particularly care for, Pineapple Express, which was fine, but it's just
not your type of humor.
This Is the End.
Again, same type of humor.
I really enjoyed 127 Hours.
Okay.
Where he is, I don't know, the true story where he's trapped in a crevice with a boulder on his arm and he has to cut off his own arm.
Oh, that's a book too,
yes,
I believe.
That is. So I really enjoyed that. I mean, there are a lot of movies that I very much enjoyed James Franco. I think it's similar to Jonah Hill, honestly. I prefer him in the serious dramatic roles these days.
Well, that's going to lead into this question. So the Contrarians said, can anyone look at this poster and take this movie seriously, given how the two actors have been mostly defined by only silly comedies?
I don't think that's entirely fair. I mean, yes, they are in comedy movies, and I think they were both in This Is the End. But I feel that they have at least a decent amount on their resume to indicate that they can be serious actors. It's not like you're picking Kevin Hart or Will Ferrell,
Will Ferrell's first one that came to mind for me.
He's making a transition in a series, but he's most well known for that.
But still, you look at him and you expect to laugh. Like that's just what happens,
right? But I think that's unfair because they have transitioned and they do have quite a few movies on their resumes that are serious.
I will say, watching this movie, I never had that moment of like, oh, I can't look at them like that. Or there are plenty of movies with other actors where I'll stop and be like, oh, I'm really having a hard time like focusing on them because they're known for, something else.
Tom Hanks is Tom Hanks. Like you can't not see that it's Tom Hanks.
Well, even Steve Carell, I have a little bit of a hard time. Like he does do serious roles, but because of The Office, like I see him that way. And it's hard sometimes, but I didn't find that with these characters. I was able to buy them in their roles, and I didn't have a hard time kind of separating that out. While it's true for other things, for them, no, I think I've seen them in pretty even amounts of serious versus comedy. Maybe not Jonah Hill. I can't think of a serious role that I've seen him in.
It was fine in Moneyball. Wolf of Wall Street.
See, I've seen all the trailers for those, but I've never seen these movies.
Wolf of Wall Street is kind of a comedy, but it's a true story about wild antics at a Wall Street firm. So it has comedic elements because it's insane.
Right.
But it's a true story. So I think
James Franco I've seen in quite a bit of serious roles, but Jonah Hill. But I thought he did great. I don't think it was an issue. So no. Contrarians, I feel contrarian to you. Thank you. That was best I could do with that. Anyway, so that is all I have there. Did you possibly find the ratings? Because I took a little sneaky peek. And
I do have the ratings. I did have a question for you.
Yeah.
Who in their right mind writes Mike M.K., then goes back for the I?
Oh my goodness! You said that during the movie. Why are we bringing that up at the end?
I
of
just
the
want to know.
podcast?
That's my audience ask. Really, who? He might be a bigger monster than Christian Longo for that. That's just no. Stop it. No.
So, all right, you guys tell us, when you write Mike, what order do you write the letters in?
Who doesn't write left to right? Who doesn't write out their name? Each letter.
Okay, but follow me here. The dot for the I, when do you do it?
The dot at the end, but you write the line.
Okay, but you do it at the end, right? You do M.
Actually, I might do the dot as I'm doing the I.
No, it's at the end.
But certainly I don't do the M-K, then go back for the I. That's an insanity.
Yeah, I mean, I don't do that either, but I definitely dot my I's at the end.
So, I just...
You needed to get that out?
I needed to get that off.
Did it feel good to get off your chest? Okay, I'm glad.
So, I do have the ratings.
Reviews.
So, Rotten Tomatoes, the critic score is a 45. The audience score is a 38. So, the consensus, from what I could see, is that they liked the performances by James Franco and Jonah Hill, but it doesn't really stack up when you factor in the ambiguity and the vagueness of the movie.
The actual
movie.
true story, too.
The true story the movie. It's a vague, undefined plotting mess for a lot of the movie.
Yeah.
So would you like to give your rating first? Because I usually do.
Okay, yeah. I was going to give it a 7. So,
okay.
Nice face there. So I enjoyed the performances. I thought that they were really well done. I thought the wife was also really well done. I struggled with the fact that I was kind of, the whole movie, I was like, I want to know the evidence. I want to know, like, because that's what you think you're getting. You're in a courtroom movie. Like, where is the evidence, you know? But after looking into the case and realizing there is no evidence, they didn't just leave it out. I don't want to take off too many points for that because there wasn't anything to give. But I do wish they had done a tale of narcissistic friends and kind of seeing how that played out. I think that they could have done this better. But, I also found out that Brad Pitt produced it. And you know what? I'm not gonna shit on Brad Pitt. I'm not gonna do it. I'm just not. So
I'm definitely way off then, because I was going to be more in line with the critics score. I was going to give it a 4.5.
Whoa!
Yeah.
Wow! I didn't realize you didn't like it this much.
The acting was fine. It's actually better than most movies that you'll see these days. James Franco, Jonah Hill, fine. It was great. It was compelling acting. I would have liked to see more. Not if you don't have the information for the case or the evidence, fine. I would like to see a little bit more exposition of Christian Longo's family getting to Oregon and just a little bit more depth there so that you can feel gutted when you find out that his family is killed. But there wasn't really that kind of connection or tie in to feel any kind of way about anything. There was no...
You didn't feel anything for Mike Finkel? They gave you that exposition on him because it was his perspective.
It's still kind of an ancillary kind of... You lost your job. I mean, it happens. You did it to yourself. And you got roped into this whole thing, but it didn't grab me the way it would have been if you had seen a little bit of like the childhood memories, the family traveling together. That would have kicked up the movie a notch for me. And without that, you're left wanting more to this movie. You're wanting any kind of tangible thing to grab onto other than the acting.
Wow. Well then, you just shit all over that. But okay. I mean, we all have our own opinions, I suppose.
I mean, other than the acting, there's nothing for this movie for you to grab hold of. It's so much air and fluff and smoke. It's just, there's nothing, no substance is my problem.
Well, okay then. Well, I mean, the Tyler critic has spoken. Okay, so that is what we have for this week. That was, for me, really fun because I love true crime. But so we have a movie next week, and you guys are gonna hate me. But I'm gonna be honest, I haven't seen this cult classic or classic movie. It's not even a cult classic. Yeah. It's just like...
No, this is a Mount Rushmore Hall of Fame horror movie.
Yeah, it came to my attention a few weeks ago. My mother actually brought it up, and then you said that Johnny Depp was in it, and it all started clicking that I have never seen this movie. So, next week, we are doing Nightmare on Elm Street.
The original Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yes. Because I haven't seen it and I need to correct this error. I know that it's going to be cheesy and that I'm going to look at it not with the lens that everybody appreciates it with.
It's very campy.
Yeah, I know that, and I'm going to go into it with that knowledge and not shit on it for being campy because that's not fair. And it's my fault for not seeing it when I should have.
I can think of a few scenes in particular involving Johnny Depp that you're going to just not.
But we're going to do it because it is Halloween time and I need to catch up on these movies that I have not seen. So that is what we're going to do next week. So thank you to Jake and Athos Music for our intro and outro music. And we will be back next week with Nightmare on Elm Street.
Thank you all for listening.